Hello everyone, this talk is about translation validation of a pattern matching compiler. I am Gabriel Scherer from INRIA, France, on the right, and this work was done in collaboration with Francesco Mecca from the University of Turin, Italy. Actually, this is Francesco Mecca's master internship work, but Francesco also decided to spend the month of August in a tent without network connection, so I am the one who prepared and recorded this talk. Our work is about checking a pattern matching compiler. A pattern matching compiler is one pass of a compiler for a functional programming language with pattern matching that transforms the pattern matching constructs into simple control flow, conditional tests, and jumps. Typically, it is not simple because the implementers of this pass have to choose trade-offs in code speed, number of checks that are done on the input data, and code size to avoid code size blow up during generation. As a result, there are some bugs in this compiler, and they are painful to detect and diagnose because they typically result in silent wrong code production. You generate code that looks right, does not raise any error at compile time. It could be, for example, well typed and well scoped, but certain input data will go to the wrong right-hand side or fail with a match failure when they should not. In OCaml, we had maybe 3 bugs in the last few years, and most of them were detected by programs hitting the bug written long after the bug was introduced. This is very tricky to diagnose, and as a result, we have been afraid to change this part of the compiler, which is not a good thing. So we would like to catch these bugs at compile time instead of later. And the approach we propose in our work is translation validation. Each time the compiler produces a compiled target program for a pattern matching construct, we could check that it is equivalent to the source pattern matching program at compile time. This is a work in progress. We have a prototype that only covers simple pattern matching features and one interesting feature, which is the when guard that we are going to present next. We cannot reproduce the bugs that were found in the production OCaml compiler, but the approach we choose to attack this problem is extensible enough to cover the related features thanks to the use of symbolic execution. One may ask, why not use an automated solver such as an SMT solver for this problem? The idea would be to encode patterns as sort of formula over access path and then delegate equivalent checking to an automated solver. This approach has been used in 2005 by Kirchner, Moreau, and Ray, who encode pattern matching into first-order logic and use the Zenon automated theorem prover to check correctness. It has at least 2 downsides. The first one, which is common to any use of automated solver, which is that it's unclear before you do the work how robust the solver will be in practice for the sort of problem you generate. The second, which is more specific to this work, is that it's hard to scale this sort of logical translations when you have a pattern matching feature that interleaves pattern matching and the evaluation of arbitrary program expressions. When guards are such a feature, pattern guards in Haskell or SuccessorML are another. Let's now see an example. So on the left, we have a source program in OCaml. First, we recall the definition of the option data type, and then the source program is a higher order function parameterized over 2 functions test and ret, and some input data input, which is an integer option. We match on this input, and the first clause in the pattern matching has a when guard that I mentioned here. So if the input is of the form some x when, and this is an arbitrary OCaml expression, test of x, if test of x evaluates to true, then we go to this right-hand side, applying the function ret to x. Otherwise, if it's sum42, then we call the function ret on 42, and in any other case, we call the function ret on 0. So this is the source program that contains mostly pattern matching definition. And the target program is exactly the one you get if you call the OCaml compiler with the d row lambda output that will show you the intermediate pattern matching representation. So it looks like this, okay? It's a Lisp style syntax with a simpler set of language features. So it's a function and 3 arguments, but the point is that the pattern matching construct has been translated into this catch construct, which is a sort of local jumps, structured jumps, conditional test like if, here, here, and here. Okay. So one thing that is interesting is the placement of arbitrary OCaml expressions in these two programs. They are placed as very specific location. Okay, in the WenGuards in blue. So here you have the source expression, and here you have the compile form in the compilation of the WenGuard. And in the right-hand side, of course, of pattern matching clauses in yellow, here you have the 3 right-hand side, and here you have the 3 compile forms of this right-hand side. The rest of the program outside this colored box is what I call the pattern matching program, okay, on the source program. And then it's a series of relatively simple control flow constructs on the right. And the idea of our work is to treat these colored boxes as black boxes. We will not inspect them or rely on anything subtle about them. We will handle them as black boxes. And then we will work on the rest of the program. So this part here, which is the pattern matching program, and this part here, which is the target compiled form of this program. There is one thing we know about these black boxes. We can actually assume that we know which target black box is equivalent to a source black box. The idea is to use the compiler as an oracle for that. So we take as the equivalence relation on these leaf arbitrary expressions just what you get by running the compiler. And then from this notion of source target equivalent on expressions or leaves, we lift this relation to an equivalent relation between pattern matching programs on the left and their compiled form in this representation on the right. So to summarize, our approach does not rely on an automated solver. It looks like this. In the source, we have a pattern matching program. On the target, we have these compiled forms with ifs and catch and so on. And we will first translate both forms to a more common representation that we call the decision tree. We are going to see an example shortly. To take a pattern matching program into a decision tree is the usual pattern matrix decomposition approach that underlies many algorithms on pattern matching. So if you're familiar with pattern matching and its implementation, you probably have seen this decomposition technique. On the target program, to generate decision trees, we use symbolic execution. And then, once we have a source and a target decision trees, they may still be quite different, and we use a decision tree equivalence procedure that we define and implemented. So let's now look at an example of decision tree. Here is the source program that I started with as an example, and here is a decision tree that represents it. So a decision tree is a tree whose nodes are either switch nodes that correspond to test on the structure of a part of the input of the pattern matching program, the scrutiny, here input, and guard nodes which correspond to these WenGuards. And then at the leaves of the decision tree, you have leaves that correspond to the right-hand side of the pattern matching program. So here, this program here is encoded as a decision tree. So there are several possible representations, but the one that we use, that our algorithm use, starts with a switch node on the route the root means the value of the scrutiny of the pattern matching. And then if the head constructor of the root is none, then we go to the leaf red 0, okay, that corresponds to this case. If it is some, then we go to decision subtree that starts with a guard node. Okay, the guard node checks test of x, so this is the guard expression, in a pattern matching environment where the variable x is bound to root.0, which is the first child or field of the scrutiny value. So x in this case, in the source program. So this is what we call an accessor, and it is a symbolic representation of a subterm of the input value. So if this guard expression returns true, then we go to a leaf that is just return x. Otherwise, we go to a new switch node, again on root.0, the same sub-value, which is the argument of the sum constructor. If it is 42, we go to a leaf red 42, and if it is not, we go to a leaf red 0. In general, there is another construction in source decision tree, which is a failure node, which is a case where the pattern matching does not match the input value. So these are source decision trees, and the test, so what the annotation on the branches of the switch and guard nodes are language level values, or in this case variant constructors, none, some. We also have target decision trees, which have a similar structure, but the tests on the branches are on low-level representation. So you will test whether the value belongs to a set of values, such as immediate integers or blocks with a certain tag. Let's now talk about the specification of the equivalence relation we want to check. So the idea is fairly standard. We want to define a heterogeneous equivalent of decision trees, saying that if you have a source value, OCaml value, that could flow into your pattern matching, and a target value that is related, in the sense that it is a valid compiled representation of the source value, then running the source pattern matching program with the source value or the target compiled program with the target value should give related result. Either you get a match failure on both sides, or you right-hand side is chosen with a captured environment of the pattern variable that is related, and the expression of the right-hand side are equivalent. So this is a standard specification of program equivalence. In particular, what it implies on these pattern matching programs is that tests on accessors, okay, so on sub-values, may be split or reordered or duplicated between the two programs, but the guards, okay, the arbitrary source expression that are evaluated to make the choices on the when construct, must be checked in the exact same order. Why is that? Because the guard expression may be side effectful, so the order of evaluation of the guards is observable, and if the compiler was to reorder or erase or duplicate some of them, that would be a change in the program behavior. In this talk, I'm going to talk about implementations of equivalent checking of decision trees. So for reasons of time, I will skip the explanation of how to go from source and target program to these decision trees. And I will describe implementation through inference rules. But we have a working prototype, an OCaml implementation, and in fact we extracted these inference rules from the OCaml code. So a first approach would be what we call a naive algorithm that starts from the idea of, well, if you take your two decision trees and then you take a pair of a source and a target leaf, you can look at the condition on the branches from the root of each tree to the leaf. This path condition describes condition on a value that could, during matching, reach this leaf, okay? And if the source and the target path conditions are compatible, It means that there exists a pair of related value such that the source would reach the first leaf and the target would reach the target leaf. And in this case, obviously the two leaves must return the same result. Okay, they must both be failure, or they must capture the same environment with related right-hand side expressions. So here is on this slide a set of inference rules that captures this idea. So the inference judgment is of the form as follows. Okay, in the input space S, I will talk about this. The decision tree, source decision tree, ds, is equivalent to the target decision tree, dt. The input space, so in general, the equivalent checking will call this procedure to check that two subtrees of the original source and target trees are equivalent. The input space represents, if you want, the path condition from the root to each subtree that we are checking for equivalent. And the path conditions are expressed not as a series of conditions, but more abstractly as a set of related values that may flow to this part of the pattern matching program. So here would be a set of naive rules to describe an equivalence algorithm. The rules says, okay, if you have a source switch node on the left, a switch node is a switch on one accessor that describes a subpart of the value of the scrutiny of the pattern matching. And then for any possible head constructor ki that this sub-value may have, you have a decision subtree di. So you have a family of index over I of pairs ki di. And so is this switch node equivalent to the target decision tree dt? Well, it is if for any I, for any possible head constructor, if you refine the input space with the knowledge that at the accessor A you saw the head constructor di, then the source decision tree di is equivalent to dt. Conversely, we have the opposite rule on target switch nodes. So here we use a pi instead of a k. The idea that the condition is not just a source level pattern constructor, but actually a set of low level representation. And then so these two rules let you explode trees that have a switch node. And then if you apply these rules repeatedly, so for now I'm not talking about guards, they come in a later slide. If you apply this rule repeatedly, two things can happen. Either at some point the conditions that you traversed are incompatible with each other, so the set of the possible values, the input space becomes empty, and then your two decision trees are vacuously equivalent. Or the input space is not empty and you reach an atomic decision tree. So if you have two leaves, you check that the expressions which contain the environment and the right-hand side are equivalent. And if you have failure node, you ask for a failure on both sides. Okay, with these rules, you can check equivalence of decision trees. Francesco actually implemented a slightly more subtle algorithm that uses the idea of trimming. If you have a switch node, let's say on a source decision tree, and the equivalent check will enter every subtree of this switch node with a new path condition. The idea is that we can trim the target tree dt right away, killing the subtrees of dt that are incompatible with this new path condition. The idea is that you traverse dt once, and then this work of removing certain subtree, which is done once, is shared for all the subtrees of your source tree di. And those will never encounter the subtrees that you killed in this trimming phase. So in typical case, this can improve the algorithmic complexity of the equivalence algorithm. So I recall the naive rules that we saw on the previous slide, and the new rules are just slightly more complex. If you have a source switch node, when you move to each di, instead of just dt, you use the trimmed tree. Okay, so you have to define this trimming operation. And then for the target node, so there is a subtlety here, which is that we can so source trees, the conditions are head constructor, and target trees, the conditions are more expressive sets of low-level representation. So it's easy to trim a target tree over a source condition, but we cannot really implement with this representation of source trees the trimming of a source tree over a target condition. And to avoid that, to avoid having to do that and to avoid losing this sort of sharing, the solution we use is to only enter a switch node on the target level when the source decision tree is already atomic, when it is a leaf or a failure node, and not when it is a rich tree. So if you do this, well, you are not trimming source trees, but you are not losing any sharing because this only occurs on very simple atomic source trees. Finally, let me talk about how we handle guards. The idea is to keep track of the guards that we have evaluated on the source while traversing the source decision tree and not yet in the target decision trees. So the full judgment has a G, okay, that I haven't shown before, which is an ordered queue of guard expressions and the Boolean result they gave, true or false, or actually 0 or 1. So when we see a guard on a source tree, so guard ES D0, D1, evaluate ES. If it evaluates to false, we go to the decision tree D0, otherwise we go to the decision tree D1. And to check whether this decision tree is equivalent to DT, we just say, well, let's record that we entered this guard node, we evaluated and checked ES, and then we will check that DT is equivalent to D0 when ES returns 0, and to D1 when ES returns 1. Then, on the target decision trees, when we encounter a guard ET, we go look at the first source expression, source guard that was pushed in this queue, okay? And then we say, okay, the guard we have must be equivalent to the source guard, otherwise the two programs evaluated distinct expression at the same place. And I know what was the result of the source guard, it's some Boolean B, so I can check that the source tree DS is equivalent to the corresponding target tree DB. So these are the rules that deal with the guard nodes and push and pop from this queue of guards. And then when we have the leaf rules for leaves and for failure, we have to check that the guard queue is empty. Otherwise, we would accept programs where more guard expressions were run on the source program than on the target program. And with this restriction, which is a fairly simple representation, we can enforce that for any input value, the same guard or related guards will be evaluated in the same order. Let me conclude. So this is the general approach we use. We have source programs with patterns. We decompose them into source decision trees. We have target program with control flow construct. We use symbolic execution to get target decision trees. And then we have an equivalence algorithm between source and target decision tree. This is work in progress. The future work fits in two categories, adding more features to be able to model interesting aspects of the OCaml pattern matching language and also the interesting bugs we have with them, and to integrate such a check in the compiler. Currently it's a prototype that is outside the compiler and is not integrated with the compiler runs. So the two features that it will be interesting to implement next are support for exceptions or extensible constructors. So exceptions are a bit tricky to deal with because statically you do not know whether two exceptions are equal or not, because OCaml allows you to rebind exception names for backward compatibility reason. So when you see two names, even if they are distinct, the actual value of the expression, the exception may be the same. And the other feature that is interesting to handle is mutable fields. Okay, so because you can evaluate arbitrary expressions in the middle of pattern matching, this expression may mutate part of the value that is the scrutiny of the pattern matching. And to support this cleanly, you have to forget the path conditions that you learned on accessors that are below a mutable field. Thank you.